Joining me now are Democratic strategists Nomiki Konst and Bob Zimmerman. Also joining me for the hour is former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Good to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, let's talk about Bernie Sanders first.
Sure.
Bob, your take on how close he is to Hillary Clinton.
Well, certainly it was a moral victory and an actual victory for Bernie Sanders, and his campaign deserves credit, and they'll get some momentum from it. But let's also put it in perspective. At the end of the night, Hillary Clinton, in fact, gained 20 more delegates. She's moved up the delegate count dramatically, and she's on her way to the nomination. But this is going to be more primaries now. It's going to be a longer process, more primaries and caucuses. And since I'm a super delegate, I'm going to get more love and more attention. So it works just fine.
So, you know, that whole superdelegate story has been criticized. I mean, Hillary has all these superdelegates, even though Bernie Sanders seems to be resonating with the popular vote in many areas.
Well, actually, in fact, she not only has, in terms of total votes, has Hillary Clinton gotten dramatically more votes than Bernie Sanders, but also in terms of pledged delegates. You take away the superdelegates, and she's still beating Bernie Sanders by about 200 pledged delegates. So in the delegate count, we're doing fine. And if you look at the overall picture nationally, Hillary Clinton's well on her way.
Nomiki, she cannot be happy with the fact that he's resonating so much with young people.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just young people, it's those under 50. If you take away the African-American vote, which she needs to do very well with, if she doesn't do very well with the African-American vote, she only gets half of the African-American vote, she can't win the nomination. I mean, I understand the superdelegate math. We all understand the delegate math. It's not the most democratic process, but the reality is we've been here before. This is what happened in 08. There was a small difference in delegate count, and superdelegates turned. But we also have to keep in mind that Super Tuesday was stacked in favor of Hillary Clinton. Now we're moving on to northern states, which are predominantly white. They're more liberal.
Nothing was stacked. You have states voting in an electoral process. You can't, just because the voter doesn't go your way, say it's stacked against you.
Well,
it's an open
we know why it was
democratic
designed.
process.
I mean, both of us are Democrats. We know that it was designed in the 80s to make a more moderate candidate electable. But we're in a different country now. You know, those states aren't winnable in the general election for Democrats.
Since Democrats have won the vote in 5 of the 6 last presidential elections, I think the system's working pretty well, so I wouldn't want to rock the boat there.
I think Nomi makes a good point, though, because, I mean, there are some people who feel that they wanted a broader range of Democratic candidates, and they weren't really given that opportunity. I mean, there are some Democrats that I know that have said, you know what, they've buried the debates, putting them on a Saturday night. They've basically said, look, Hillary is the candidate, get on board. So I think the stacked comment does resonate.
Well, Maria, we have a Democratic socialist running, and we have Hillary Clinton. That's a pretty broad range of philosophy. On top of which, I think if you look at the turnout, since this is the strongest Democratic primary turnout since 1992, with the exception of 2008. So I think you're going to see, as this primary process moves forward, and obviously with Senator Sanders' win in Michigan, we're going to have more primaries and more caucuses being competitive. I think it's actually good in terms of creating momentum, some excitement.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani, let's talk about what we saw last night. Michigan, Mississippi, Hawaii for Donald Trump.
I would be worried about Michigan if I were Hillary. Here Trump wins it big. Sanders takes away a good deal, half the vote, half the Democratic vote she can't get. You know, that Rust Belt is very important to the Democratic Party winning. And if a state like Michigan can fall, Minnesota possibility, Wisconsin possibility, Republican governors at least in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
The whole electoral math gets thrown off if Donald is the candidate. Looks like he'll dominate the South. If he can dominate the South against Cruz, he's certainly going to dominate it against Hillary.
Yeah.
But you know,
Donald's the kind of candidate that could make inroads in a place like I'm not going to say New York, but New Jersey, Pennsylvania. This is a very strange candidate.
I think New York, too. You don't think New York?
We're throwing a curveball at them.
We really are.
One of the reasons we Democrats were so concerned and I would say even frightened of running against Mayor Giuliani if he were the Republican nominee is because Mayor Giuliani always, his hallmark was building broad coalitions and bringing people together. That's why he was one of our worst concerns, one of our biggest concerns as a general election candidate. The point is here with Donald Trump, I mean, his team may want to give him a political facelift, but quite frankly, he needs an organ transplant because he has run such a demagogic right-wing campaign. I don't see how he builds broader coalitions.
I don't know if it's right-wing, though. He's getting Democratic votes.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
I don't think you can call him a right-wing.
I'm doing testing constantly. You know, I do the dial testing, and I'm checking out how Republicans, Democrats, independents are responding. Independents across the board are loving Trump's message.
Yeah.
Well,
and it shocks me.
I can't think of one Barack Obama voter who voted for President Obama in 2008 or 2012 that's switching over to Donald Trump. I don't see
You
that
would
in
be
all the
surprised. The
testimony.
Reagan Democrats that voted for Barack Obama, that didn't go with Hillary Clinton. I mean, we have to remember, these are the people that he brought into the coalition that now are voting for Bernie Sanders. But guess who's second choice? Donald Trump. That has to freak Hillary Clinton out. If she doesn't get white working class voters, we're done. We're done.
Let me tell you something. Go ahead, Mayor. I'm sorry.
He also brings new voters into the.
I think that's true.
You've got about 2 million people that he can potentially bring into the process who haven't voted, who are independent, who are sort of on the fence as Republicans or Democrats. That's where I think he's got a lot of strength. And if I were Hillary, I would not want to run against a curveball.
Yeah.
I'd want to run against a straight conservative. The electoral math I could count on. The electoral math here is going to be very, very hard.
Sounds like you think Trump can beat Hillary, but Cruz cannot.
I don't think Cruz can beat Hillary. I think Cruz is a straight Republican.
He's too conservative, you think?
Absolutely. Oh, the entire Northeast is gone. The entire West is gone. I don't think he's going to do well, as you saw last night in the Rust Belt. I think Cruz is, unless Hillary gets into real trouble with the Justice Department, then I think she would beat him.
You know, today's Wall Street Journal NBC News poll that just came out this morning shows that both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are in double-digit leads over Donald Trump. And so I think that says something when you take away Trump out of the echo chamber of the Republican primary process. I mean, you've got a Republican Party where 44% believe the president's a secret Muslim. To that crowd, Duck Dynasty is a think tank. So you got to put it in perspective. And you look at Donald Trump outside of the Republican orbit into the general election. That Wall Street Journal poll is an interesting indicator.
Do you agree with that, Lee?
No. Because what I see is momentum and energy. And where I see enthusiasm, that's where voters go. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to get voters to the poll. And no one is more excited than a Trump voter.
Yeah.
When you talk to a Hillary voter, it's like, I'm kind of, they're lukewarm. They're not that excited. They want to be, but they're just not. Her likability numbers, we can talk about likability numbers, but her trustworthy numbers are really an issue. And it's really going to be hard to get those numbers out. Trump voters are enthusiastic, they're excited, and they're contagious.
And
they're
Democrats,
infectious.